Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Maureen Corrigan, longtime book critic for Fresh Air, Georgetown professor, and also the author of 24 lectures for the Great Courses Company on banned books, from the Inquisition to critical race theory. So, and I left a lot out, so there's a lot more to say. Fellow panelists, Jewel Gomez, who is an activist, a writer. Stillwater is her most recent poetry collection, which is available for sale in the book room. Her Black lesbian vampire novel, The Gilda Stories, has been in print for more than 30 years and has been optioned for a TV miniseries. And her third play, Unpacking in P-Town, premiered in San Francisco this spring. Margot Duahi is a poet, writer, assistant professor of creative writing at Emerson College. She's the author of the best-selling Sister Holiday series. The first novel in that series is called Scorched Earth, and it won the Pinkley Prize and was named the best crime novel of the year by the New York Times, The Guardian, and other outlets. And then Michael Cunningham, his latest magnificent novel is Day. He's the author of 6 other novels, including The Hours, which won the PEN/Faulkner Award and the Pulitzer Prize in 1999. So we are all here to talk about banned books, which it seems like every day there's a new horror that's announced. Michael did some pulling together of statistics for this panel, and I thought maybe we could start by you sharing some of that info. Do you have it? Because I have it if you don't have it.
Oh, I have it. I just can't turn my mic on. Am I on? Push. There you go. Push it where it's push. Okay, but am I on? Oh, all right. Yeah. This is from PEN America. During the first half of the 2022-2023 school year, PEN recorded 1,500 instances of individual books banned, an increase of 28% compared to the prior 6 months. That's more instances of book banning than recorded in either the first or second half of the 2021-22 school year. Over this 6-month timeline, the total instances of book bans affected is over 800 titles. This equates to over 100 titles removed from student access each month. Just quickly, moving to books that are read by young people, but intended also for adults. Some of the banned books that have been banned in various places include The Handmaid's Tale, The Great Gatsby, The Kite Runner, To Kill a Mockingbird, The Bluest Eye, 1984, widely banned. That was a bit of a surprise to me. Push by Sapphire, Mouse by Art Spiegelman, Of Mice and Men, and Huckleberry Finn, Slaughterhouse-Five, The Color Purple, and perversely my personal favorite, Anna Karenina. You got me there. Yeah. But these are all books that have been successfully, let's say, removed from library shelves in various places.
Yeah, and I wanted to add 2 more hot off the press horrors, which is the news that lawmakers in Texas are now trying to pass a bill to criminalize the teaching of texts that are in any way, in their opinion, sexually inappropriate, including Catcher in the Rye. They're trying to pass a law to ensure that if you teach something like Catcher in the Rye, you can go to jail for up to 10 years. So there's
I
that.
just have to say, I want to go to jail. What are you in for? I would be everybody's prisoner.
Yeah, I want to be in that part of the jail where we all have a good club. Maybe I'll just ditch the microphone and use my teacher voice to project. The other thing, and because I live in Washington, D.C., somehow these things hit a little harder because they seem to be just surrounding me. But the Trump administration is trying to basically withdraw funds from the Institute of Museum and Library Studies. In a March executive order, President Trump called for its elimination. So what does that mean? It means eliminating programs like databases that give students help for homework and test prep. It would reduce the funding for bookmobiles, library services for the blind, summer reading programs, high-speed internet access, particularly in rural areas, and also lead museums to cut their education and digital literacy programs. I held a book banning event at Georgetown a month ago that I'm happy to say you never know with students, but the students came and it was packed. But one student got up and asked a question. He said, well, what's the big deal? He said it a little bit more delicately. What's the big deal about banning books these days? We don't read as many books these days, and we get our information from other sources. So, the implication was we were all kind of ginning up hysteria about this, but it wasn't really that big a deal. And one of the things I thought was, well, that's a question a student at Georgetown could ask. That's not going to be a question that somebody out there who doesn't have the resources, who doesn't even know how to connect in a sense with books. Maybe like we were when we were really young. You need somebody else to put that book in your hand or to recommend it. So I thought maybe we could start off on a more up note as a testament to books. Like, what about the books that you either were assigned in school or somebody gave you that you felt as a young person, this book affirmed you or opened up the world for you in a way that you couldn't even imagine without that book, And I'm curious about that.
I'm not thinking of a specific book, but the institution, the idea of that organization losing its funding because bookmobiles would be vastly affected. And as a kid growing up in Boston in the 50s, I was in a very poor neighborhood, and of course Boston has amazing libraries, except in poor neighborhoods. And my neighborhood had no library whatsoever, and the bookmobile came every Thursday to our neighborhood, and my best friend and I were in line at 3:30 on Thursday, every week, rain, snow, or otherwise. And if it had been for that bookmobile, I don't know how my learning would have progressed. I mean, my family read, my grandmother, my great-grandma, everyone in my family read quite a bit, but they bought secondhand books at a secondhand bookstore. So where would I have learned that there was a larger collection of ideas without the bookmobile? And I think I would have really, my life and career would have been greatly reduced if that truck didn't pull up every Thursday and open up these amazing doors to a kid who, you know, I saw my neighborhood and that was it. So.
Yeah, thank you for that. No.
We got this. We got this. I think what's a killer? Loneliness. Loneliness is a killer. When you have a book, you are not alone.
Right.
You're not alone. You are with someone. You are inside someone's head. You are in their heart. I'm going to intone the incredible Rebecca Solnit, who says that a book is a heart that can only beat in the chest of another. There's a sacred relationship between the author and the reader. You know, it's an interesting take. Some people believe that, you know, I'm just going to write and maybe someone will, and my gesturing is even that loud. I'm Lebanese American, so I'm going to call it right in. But that is something that I firmly believe, that it's that idea that this thing can only live and only beat in your heart. And the idea of removing the possibility for that sacred connection of living someone else's life for a minute, even if it is reprehensible, even if they're making choices you would never make. I'm a poet and I'm a crime fiction writer. I love mysteries, I love noir, I love unhinged women's stories. I love rolling around in the muck and the kind of insanity and craziness of just the texture of daily life. I think it's important, I think it's fascinating. You don't necessarily have to read for, this is a manual on how to live my life. We read for so many reasons, for pleasure, for inspiration, to galvanize, all of the things. And to just blanketly say, you know, these books are quote unquote dangerous books. I mean, I'll go off in a million directions, sorry. In advance, I will apologize. But I rant because I love this world. I love what you all have done. Your books have changed my life. Growing up in Scranton, Pennsylvania during the don't ask, don't tell era, where you couldn't speak about who you actually were. I had like fake boyfriends and I literally even had like a fake fiance for a long time. My parents are super religious and super kind of conservative, have come a long way together as a family, which has been an incredible testament. But your books were hugely instrumental, you know, to me. You asked about books that have changed our lives. The Hours is one of those books that has truly changed my life. The interiority of characters who are going through and making truly challenging decisions with nuance, with texture, with care, with love. To, you know, just have these arbitrary rules that will vary, but they do have a common thread. I think we can connect them and say perhaps they're books that give voice to the people who are outside of the power majority, perhaps. A lot of them are LGBTQ author books. A lot of them are written by people of color. They include what would be considered, you know, perhaps dissent. You know, again, there's so many, the books that you read on that list are so diverse, but there's just something so fundamentally almost physical that when we're talking about these ideas of a book ban, there's rumblings of a national book ban. Let's just hold space for that for a second. It's not, you know, it's a personal, beautiful act of vitality in life that I just take so deeply, and I will fight for. I will see you in prison. I will be there with Michael and I are going to be there together.
Be holding down that silver.
Yeah, we got the, yeah.
We will so run that. We will so run.
You know, but these are the, can you believe this? 2025 and we're talking about criminalizing like books. And just last anecdote, I know I got riled up, but it's out of love again. Was just at a fabulous book festival, Left Coast Crime Festival of mystery authors, thriller authors, and a panelist was talking about a recent book signing she did at a library in Indiana. There have been so many challenges to this particular young adult book section of the library that they removed the entire section. So that's part of the strategy. That is part of the strategy to lob all of these challenges, lob all the complaints, so that they close the entire wing. So even books that might not be objectionable are being affected. That's kind of the collateral ripple effect, the downstream effect of this kind of thing. And that is what they want. They don't want us reading, they don't want kids thinking reading. For that, I will now pass the mic. But I love this topic, I love that we're coming together, and I will never let go of that stubborn hope that is there. I think we are feeling that fire, I think we're feeling lit up. And maybe I'm like just disillusioned, but I will always kind of end on the optimism. I'm a stubborn optimist. That's kind of my, that's where my happy place is. I don't know where to go from there, but you know.
I think you should publish that as an
Are they recording?
Is the technology just weird and gross and we should get rid of it?
Yeah, I think we got it.
All right, just check. Catcher in the Rye. You're a 14-year-old boy, and you read Catcher in the Rye, moving along the notion that books are company. Company is about the fact that you are not only not alone, you are not the only one who's like that.
Exactly right.
There are other people, and books, I think the books I love most simultaneously show you what it's like to be someone who's not you,
Right.
while showing you that actually we're all kind of like us.
Yes.
And I can't possibly exaggerate the difference it made reading about Holden Caulfield and feeling like, well, at least there's two of us. And it, you know, if there hadn't been that book, I don't know what I would have. I don't know what I would have done exactly it did more than my therapist. It did more than the various pharmaceuticals that were an ongoing attempt to make me be not that like that. But that book was by far the most powerful.
Yeah.
And that's why it's dangerous.
Right.
That's why.
And that's what they've gotten
Dangerous.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, reading is dangerous.
It is
Yes.
dangerous,
It has-
art is dangerous.
Possibility of
Yes.
totally changing each other's lives.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that means it will never be let go. I mean, they could institute a national ban, but, you know, things always get slipped from one to the other. Books always get shared. That's one of the great things about books. They
Yes.
always get shared, so.
You know, Margot, you mentioned LGBTQ plus, absolutely, the target right now
Yes.
is people of color. So genderqueer by
Yeah.
on some lists is the most banned book in America. Graphic novel, Maya Kobe, the author, writes about, you know, being genderqueer, you know, not feeling like they fit into this or that. I think the fact that it's a graphic memoir, I should say, the graphicness of it somehow, I think that ticks people off too. But that book, I've read about the background of it. It got published, 2018? And then it was picked up, it won a library award. And that award from the library, you know, that set it on its course to being read. And so when I see this threat to libraries and pulling funding, and also, you know, as you're pointing out, occupying librarians' time by having to defend books so that they can't put books into your hands. There are ways in which these bans, this atmosphere of censorship is working that's way beyond these formal bans that you read about. You mentioned Catcher in the Rye, so let's turn it around. Some people, maybe even some people I teach with at Georgetown would say, Salinger, wasn't he kind of creepy? And what about his relationship with...
But weren't they all creepy?
Yeah, but some people, some people are sort of are tarred that way or labeled that way, and there's that suggestion of, well, maybe you shouldn't read something by Salinger, give money to his estate, his heirs, by reading Catcher in the Rye. I mean, fill in the blank.
No,
Alice
yeah,
Munro.
I just don't believe that one mini iota. If we were to make up a list of creepy, terrible people who wrote great books.
Right.
Just imagine how many books just go fly right out the window.
Yeah.
It just the one simply does not lead to the other. Thomas Mann was an awful person. We still read Magic Mountain.
Would you have invited Junot Diaz to Yale 10 years ago?
That's a good question.
I mean,
Here's where I think,
Yeah.
we've talked
We
about
have
this
talked
a little
about it.
bit.
We
Like,
kind of
I teach a literature class, and I change up the syllabus every year. We read 25 to 30 short stories, and I'm giving Alice Munro a year off. Because the time goes by so quickly, we have so much to talk about. It's not a class about any connection between the author's life and the author's work, and I don't want us to have to spend a class talking about Alice Munro's unfortunate behavior. And yet I feel a little uncomfortable about that at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But there will be a class for that discussion, just
Oh,
not
yeah,
necessarily that
and I would love to
class.
teach that class, but that's not what this class is.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I may, I think it's really, I love debate. I think good faith debate, good faith arguments, good faith spirited disagreement is actually what we need right now.
Yeah.
I think the opposite is what's really terrifying. The erasure kind of on one side, quote unquote, one side or another. I think that we need more textured, nuanced conversations. So the Ta-Nehisi Coates book, The Message, in which he actually talks about Between the World and Me, which is banned, a lot, and particularly in South Carolina. And he wrote this extraordinary, exhilarating, luminous essay about going down to these school board meetings and meeting with the teacher who assigned his book and trying to hear about why the school board, kind of pulled the book, and we can talk a little bit more about that. But he has some really great insight about, yes, we have problemized text, of course. Yes, we have, authors that are humans and they are flawed, and we don't necessarily want to venerate people who are upholding particularly harmful or damaging perspectives. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it and make choices based on, what we can kind of think about and come up with. So I think it's actually another opportunity for more nuance, more buy-in, more, kind of paradigm shifting, not less. So I invite that, and I teach noir, and I teach some of these canonical works from the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, highly problematized.
Right.
Oh wow, breathtakingly so. So let's talk about it. What was informing the worldview at the time?
Right.
And yes, there might be cases where it's like the tipping point is like, is it so, we bring our whole selves to the books too. We bring all of us. We don't read in a vacuum, we don't learn in a vacuum. people are bringing their life experiences, their lived experiences. If all of the things. So that's important too, but we should talk about it. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Maureen, we were talking about some experiences with students who
With
have
students,
refused to read a book or have been angry about having been asked to read a book.
Yeah, I've had, years ago, white male student flung Alice Walker across the room and said The Color Purple and said, this is garbage. But kind of to speak to your observation, Margot, that class came on fire. Defending the book. I also had a student a few years ago, a white student, kind of take me aside and say, I don't think you should teach County Cullen's Incident anymore. In Harlem Renaissance poetry, I teach a course on New York literature. It has the N-word in it, in the middle. It's like a punch in the gut. It's important that it's there. And she said, I think you're going to get in trouble. She was trying to be protective. And, kind of like you with Alice Munro, I thought, well, maybe this is a case of, probably it, the white professor not thinking it through, whatever, not setting it up. So I didn't teach County Cullen the next year. And then I thought, if I don't teach it, are they ever going to read it? Is this going to be buried in some way? So now I set it up more, of course. And I teach noir too.
Yeah.
So, oh my God, we're doing Touch of Evil on Tuesday. But it does take time away from what I think most of us as teachers and people who care about literature want to do, which is let's dig into the text. Like you really do have to contextualize and historicize and anticipate. Yeah. Did I leave something out? No.
No, well, we're going to leave everything out, but I think it's important to talk about the various sources of banning and censorship, and some of them are often people behind desks in school district offices, and some of them are your students.
Right, and kind of the generalization is that bannings from the right happen institutionally, and bannings from the left happen in publishers deciding whether or not they want to publish a certain book, in book critics deciding whether it's going to be too much trouble to deal with reviewing Lionel Shriver, who I think is a good writer, but she's also politically a pain in the neck. So you make those decisions, teachers, professors deciding maybe it's too hot to handle Alice Munro, which I agree, maybe this is not the year.
Like a year.
Yeah, this is not the year.
It's not like Alice Munro is going to go out of print.
That's a good point.
Never.
That's a good point.
No, Alice Munro will be just fine. If
her and her estate will be
12 students don't read an Alice
Yeah,
Munro
right.
in 1 year.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
but Jewel, you have another angle on this issue, which is theater. And I think that's really important.
I have been thinking a lot about it since I've just come off of a 10-year period of writing plays, and thinking about how theater has been so affected by censorship. From the play The Captive in, I think, 26 or so, which is about a lesbian relationship, and one of the lesbians you never see on stage, but the censors got so freaked out. From that show to 1967, it was illegal to show homosexuality on the stage. Wow. On Broadway. And you think...
Wait, which year?
I think it was 1926 to 1967. And So those are all those, think of all those plays that might have, you know, but that's happened again. I mean, there's an earlier play in 1906, it's called God of Vengeance, and it was the first play translated from Yiddish to English. And it's about a bordello, and these two women fall in love, and the show was broken up, and the whole cast was dragged to jail.
Wow.
The whole cast was dragged to jail. So that was in 1906. And, you know, and there are others. I mean, I looked up, the thing I was gonna read from, was Angels in America, which has been banned in a number of situations. And in addition to just the book itself being banned from libraries or schools, it means that people won't produce it because they're too afraid. Universities are too afraid to produce the play. And it means there's generations of people, young thinkers, who don't learn about a generation of queer people. They don't learn about a brilliant gay dramatist. Just think of all the things they don't learn because this one play does not get, I mean, it's so all-encompassing as a play, there's a lot of things that you will miss. And one of the things I think makes it difficult for censors is not simply that it's about AIDS and it's about queerness, it's about how the US government betrayed everyone. It's about how Reagan betrayed people, and you know, it's about how religion betrayed people. So I think that's a core part of what makes censors want to ban it. And I think there's a lot of other plays that have suffered that fate. And you know, you don't think about people reading plays that much, but they do. And if you're studying in theater, if you're studying any kind of drama, you read plays. I mean, the first theater class I took when I was an undergraduate was a class on Williams, Miller, and Albee. And I'm wondering, would somebody hesitate to teach that class today? You know.
Someone I told back home, back in Washington DC, the center of horror right now. I said I'm going to.
Or as they call it on Buffy, the Hell Mouth.
The Hell There it is. Yes. I said I'm going to the Tennessee Williams Literary Festival, and they said, "Oh, you know, Tennessee Williams was part of the group that won the second year that the Kennedy Center honors." I said, "You're kidding." Like, and can you imagine Williams these days even being performed at the Kennedy Center or any of the people you just mentioned?
Yeah.
No. And in some ways, boy, we are really going backward fast.
Yeah.
Roots was banned for the first time this year.
This year?
This year, yeah, Roots, which, you know, when it came out, what, 1977? The television series?
Yeah.
Well, every other house in America was watching that series.
Right.
Can you imagine? America united by watching a television miniseries about slavery.
I was stage managing a production at this small theater in New York and it was on for like 5 days or 7 days or something, and we were in rehearsal, and the producer had it on the television in his office, and so when people were in between their scenes, they were running up to see it. It was such a phenomenon.
It was a phenomenon.
And it wasn't a time where you could assume it would be streaming, because it wasn't streaming, and you never knew when it was going to be repeated. So it was dramatic. I mean, and for anyone to interrupt a rehearsal, it was like insane. So yeah, it was phenomenal.
Can I add something to
You
that?
can do
That
whatever
it's just
you
so vital is that you know, that we have a lot of writers here in the room. The feeling when you see something, when you read something, and you're like, I gotta make art right now.
Yes.
It literally lights you on fire and you want to create. Can you imagine, so taking those sources away, the people that saw, you know, the plays that you've done, Angels in America. I remember the first time I saw Angels in America. It was on, you know, it was a televised production of it, but it blew me away and it made me want to write. It made me want to think. And then what did I write in response to
Correct.
Angels in America? And then what, hopefully, maybe, who knows, in whatever years, decades, somebody writes something based on what I might have written, based on seeing what he wrote. It's like, this is the beauty of art. It is uncontainable. The ripples never stop.
Yeah.
Oh, except if you start to remove those points of electrification.
Right.
And then going back to, I can't remember, you know, there's a lot of intertextuality in that piece as well, but yeah, I'm just gonna do a little celebrity nod here for my publisher and great author friend Gillian Flynn, author of Gone Girl and Sharp Objects in the room right here. But don't Angels in America. I'm just thinking, there's something you do. What is it?
I know Tony, he signed my book when I have the foreword of Gone Girl, and he very kindly signed the copy of the foreword of the note that he wrote when he was in a park writing one of his plays, the specific play that's in the foreword of the book, and it meant so much to me because I was such an Angels in America fan, and that's certainly some of the writing that inspired Gone Girl, which is also banned.
Yeah, Sharp Objects in, Gone Girl banned in many states. So it's just, that to me is part of what we're fighting for, and it makes me want to take even more crazy risks and take more creative swings and just be that experimental, free, responsive artist for the life-giving properties that it did for me, seeing a variety, you know, everything from, you know, telling interesting, fascinating takes on Shakespeare and Chaucer to super experimental, you know, work that lives in no category at all. To me, it's all the same, these different nodes in the galaxy, as it were. But I remember that when I first read Gone Girl, I was like, wow, Angels in America, like, it's just, you never know.
You never know where those intersections are going to be.
That is the power, that is the magic, and, you know, as you're talking about running into seeing roots while you were practicing, rehearsing, it's just, it's just like so special.
Yeah.
And wasn't that aired on PBS?
No, it was
No,
aired
it
on
was,
one of the
ABC
three,
or something.
ABC, right.
I was just thinking of when, because now PBS, of course, public media is now under threat.
Yeah.
As you know, and NPO, Lori Corrigan, Rush Air. No, I remember that was like March 14th was Protect My Public Media Day.
Yeah, yeah.
And I thought, wait, why do we need to protect my public media day? Because I've been in a little bit of a news embargo because it's just my nervous system was shot.
Yeah. There's an attack on earned authority. There's an attack on, of course, education. I worry with NPR, with PBS, it's not going to be the major stations that will disappear. It'll be the stations out there that won't be able to afford to buy the expensive news programs, and they'll just sort of crumble up and disappear. So all of this, when people say, how do you fight book banning? How do you fight attacks on public radio, public television? It's a little hard to have one answer because especially because they keep hitting these institutions where it really hurts, with taking away the funding, threatening the funding. Threatening Columbia, threatening Georgetown. We had a threat. you know, if you don't stop with the DEI programs, we won't hire your law school graduates, you know. Thank God our dean stood up to that threat, that the money is being withheld. I had asked my fellow panelists to pick out a passage from a banned book that they would like to read today, and here's why. We talk a lot about book bannings in terms of subject. Oh, you know, either they're queer or it's sexually explicit or there's a religious problem with it. You know, all those subjects that trigger book bannings. But there's another aspect to books, and you're all speaking to it, and to plays. It's the language. And it's not just that the subjects are going to be lost or that representation is going to disappear. As important as all of that is, it's the language of these books that, you know, students, young people, they won't be introduced to, they won't be alerted to. So I don't know really what you all decided on. I know some of the decisions, but I wonder if you could give us a taste of books that you think need to exist, or plays that you chose to share with everybody. Pleasure.
I can read from, this is from scene 9 of Angels in America, the first one. I can't never remember, is it Millennium Motive? Oh, this is the first one. You want the, louder, okay. This is a scene where Roy Cohen, the devil, I mean, the lawyer, who was instrumental in the Red Scare witch hunts with what's his name? Thank you. McCarthy hearings, and then was with Ronald Reagan in his cabinet, who was a notorious seeker of young men. Not that I'm against being a seeker of young men, but his whole big thing was he was not it. And this is him in his Dr. Henry's office. Henry. Nobody knows what causes it. Nobody knows how to cure it. The best theory is that we blame a retrovirus, the human immunodeficiency virus. Its presence is made known to us by the useless antibodies which appear in reaction to its entrance into the bloodstream through a cut or an orifice. The antibodies are powerless to protect the body against it. Why? We don't know. The body's immune system ceases to function. And he goes on in that way. Roy pauses, he sits, and then says, "This is very interesting, Mr. Wizard. Why the fuck are you telling me this?" The doctor says, "Well, I have just removed one of 3 lesions which biopsy results will probably tell us it's Kaposi's sarcoma lesions. And you have a pronounced swelling of glands in your neck, groin, and armpits. Lymphadenopathy is another sign. And you have oral candidiasis, my medical language, sorry. And maybe a little more fungus under the fingernails of 2 digits on your right hand. So that's why this disease," and doctor says, "syndrome," where he says, "whatever, it afflicts mostly homosexuals and drug addicts. Mostly hemophiliacs are also at risk. Homosexuals and drug addicts? So are you implying that he stares hard at the doctor, who begins to feel nervous. "What are you implying, Henry?" I'm not a drug addict." "Come on, Roy." What? Come on, Roy, what? Do you think I'm a junkie, Henry? Do you see tracks? This is absurd. Say it. Say what? Say, Roy Cohn, you are, Roy, you are a, go on. Not Roy Cohn, you are a drug fiend. Roy Marcus Cohn, you are a, Go on, Henry, it starts with an H. Oh, I'm not going to. With an H, Henry, and it isn't hemophiliac. Come on. What are you doing, Roy? No, say it. I mean it. Say, Roy Cohn, you are a homosexual. And I will proceed systematically to destroy your reputation, your practice, and your career in New York State, Henry, which you know I can do. And that's the state of the union we are in right now.
I'm going to ask folks we're going to sacrifice our readings so that we can get the audience in on this conversation.
Yes, please.
You have Ta-Nehisi Coates, I'm sorry.
Yes.
You have And Tango Makes Three.
Oh.
You can read it. A little. And I have Lolita, which but
Wait, just hold on a second. Tango Makes Three's band?
yeah,
The Penguins?
yeah, the Penguins.
Yeah.
Gay
Yeah,
Penguins.
the gay penguins are out.
With the little rock and then the egg?
You know, can you read that?
Okay, that just,
Yeah, people, yeah, good.
Is it fear that's running this to ban the books? Fear that people don't want to know, they're afraid of what they might hear. I feel like there's fear behind all of this. Can you address that?
I think that's a really good question. Like,
I think it cleaves two ways. I think it's fear and I think it's control.
Yeah.
I think there's genuine fear. I think for some people it's genuine fear. And I think for others it's genuine desire to control. I think it's both. I really do. You know, fear is primal, it's natural. So whatever, but it can be weaponized. And I think there is, the school board meetings and whatnot, if you listen, there is genuine curiosity or concern about maybe what kids have access to. And I validate, all of those questions. Again, let's talk about it instead of perhaps decisions that come down that remove, the ability to think. But then I think the other side of it, which is much more nefarious, is it control, is to erase, we're seeing that happening with our, the members of our community who identify as transgender, erasing them from the conversation completely to control the narrative. So I do see it as two. That's just personally, that's just my opinion.
Well, I agree. I think people do have fear of things that are different.
Yeah.
I mean, some people are, the exact opposite. Different, they want it. I think most people are, I don't know if I want to turn that corner and I don't know what's around it. But I think this administration has consistently played on those fears that people have about difference and demonized those differences so that it whips up even more fear and people feel like, well, I'm protecting my children. I'm protecting my community. And essentially, they're not. And they won't find that out until, many generations later. But it is that control and power, and that is a way to gain power, is to use other people's fear.
So, I'm sorry.
So I do worry about when I'm teaching certain texts. I recently taught, not that they read the whole thing, but we looked at some sections of how in the context of the obscenity trial. So I do worry about certain texts and how to approach them, but also, depending, you work for different universities. I work for the University of the South, so it's different. I'm now at the point where I'm worrying, can I, as far as collections of books, can I offer a course again in disability studies? Can I offer a course again in gender studies? Because those are those are my concentrations besides poetry. And I am very afraid of losing my job. I know that certain people who had bios where that was like, I don't know if disability studies got taken down, but certain things like that actually erased it from their bio. If they were doing research on, for example, problems of discrimination, so forth, that was taken off. So it's not just like what we can teach, but like concepts and ideas.
Yeah, it's whether you have a job. Right.
Right.
And then there's that preemptive censoring, because quite rightly, people are afraid of losing their jobs.
The teacher, you about the teacher who put up all these welcoming signs in her class and says, everybody is welcome here, and the school board just insisted she take them down. And she said, no.
I think it was an Iowa, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, what am I gonna put up there? Nobody is welcome here. So that's case is still, she's still under fire.
I think, for me, I always think there's the upside to this is that so many times when books are challenged or banned, the people who are doing the challenging and banning haven't read the entire book.
At all, or at
all,
yeah.
right. But, you know, in a really backhanded way, it's a testament to the power of words.
Yes.
That,
Yes.
you know, you can be so afraid of a sentence that, you know, people are quoting all the time in these censorship cases. They don't even read the entire text, but it's just that sentence or that paragraph that, oh, no, the book has got to go. I mean, isn't that, I feel like as a literature teacher who's been spending time for decades trying to underscore to students, literature is powerful, it's important, you need it. In a way, the banners are making that argument in
Absolutely.
a turn negative way. Yeah.
Yeah, and oh yeah, I was gonna say to add to that, just that resistance art is incredible. Like punk is, you know, rag girl and punk are some of my favorite types of music, as well as like spirituals that were created, you know, during times of enslavement. And they both speak to the power of resistance and creating art in oppression. Like God save the queen, you know what I'm saying? So hey, bring it on. You're gonna try to repress us, you're gonna try to ban our thought. Well, we're just gonna create art that is literally a switchblade to you. So I invite that sense of, look at the continuum of incredible art that comes from these moments where our backs are against the wall in a lot of ways. That we can do this, and again, the ripple effects are incredible.
Just to draw on that thread, actually, I'd like to ask, speaking of the challenges, before we end up in a kind of American samizdat, where we're sort of passing books around in this underground sort of format, which could actually be kind of cool. I'm curious about the challenges to the challenges, right? So Maureen, you mentioned that there have been a bunch of banned book events. Certain states have had pushback to where, no, we're not going to, you know, ban these after all. And I'm really curious, what are the successful strategies that we have seen, whether they're legal efforts, relational efforts, artistic efforts, to actually gain some ground back, right? To take these school boards, go to their meetings, say like Ta-Nehisi did, like, let's actually dialogue.
Yeah.
Where are we winning? We can talk all day long about where we're losing, but where are we winning?
Yeah, that's a great question.
It is a great question, and I don't have, you know, the answer. I know that when I've spoken at library systems around the country, people have talked about, you know, we've got to keep at it, we've got to, you know, go to the library meetings, we've got to talk about the selection process by which, you know, which is often very private, by which librarians are deciding what to buy, what to put on the shelves. But that really does involve a lot of time and also sometimes a lot of ferreting out. When do these meetings happen? How do they happen? The successful efforts that I've heard about have been when a school board has threatened, for instance, 4 years ago, you mentioned Gatsby, in Alaska, a school district banned The Great Gatsby. And there was enough outcry, also among the parents, that that got overturned. but it was after the fact, it was when the banning got in place. I feel like we need these communities, like a school community. I don't know how you find out about library board meetings.
Well,
Who does that?
I used to be the president of the San Francisco Public Library
Okay.
Commission. And I would say it was one of the most exciting times of my life to be in rooms where people came to the commission meetings to argue, to question. And I had never seen such a rabidly supportive group of people of varying, it wasn't just parents, it wasn't just, people who needed to sleep in the library, because we had quite a bit of that. But it was people who understood that the library was the last democratic institution in this country. And participation in library commission meetings is really key, because you can support the decisions that librarians want to make, and they are really on the front line.
Yes.
And
yes.
talking about worrying about your job as a professor, librarians, if they do not have the support of the head librarian, of the commission, which is, usually a city agency, they're lost. And I would, San Francisco, their sub-motto is the queerest library ever. And the bookmobile goes in the gay pride parade every year. So I think if we could help in other cities make our libraries as responsive and as strong as has happened in San Francisco, that's a place where you can do something active and positive that's within your scope. You don't have to tie yourself to the chain yourself to the White House. But you can look at, and library commission meetings go up on their website, and it's usually a monthly meeting, and I'm sure it's not much more than that in other cities, but they're up on the city website. You can find out what the topics are. You can go and introduce a topic. I think it's important to know what's going on in your public libraries.
Another way that we're winning is that libraries like the Brooklyn Public Library are giving cards to anyone,
Right.
absolutely anyone. So those are some of the wins as well. Well-funded systems are opening up the aperture, and there are more roadmaps like that. It's all happening kind of quickly, but there are incredible signs of light and of life, definitely. And events like this, frankly, that we take away, we come away galvanized and energized.
Yeah.
This is kind of interesting from Russia. Most of my books are banned in Russia, but they apparently, my last one was not queer enough to be banned. There is a passage, a brief passage involving sex between two men, and my publisher was told we're going to have to cut that, and they asked me how I would feel about, instead of cutting it, they just redacted it, so the readers would know that Russia thinks you shouldn't read this.
That's great.
Isn't that?
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
That is great.
One thing on school boards, to fight school boards, we have to run for school board.
Yeah.
Moms for Liberty is a group certainly in Charleston, South Carolina, where I spent some time, and they are organizing. And the last school board meeting, less than 6% of the population that could vote came out to vote. And some of them, nobody runs. And I urge anybody to start fighting back by putting your name on the line or getting somebody who can run to run, because that's the way you get there and that's the way you vote. You can stand at that microphone as a participant all you want, but you don't have a vote until you're there. But Moms for Liberty, if you look at their Facebook page, they have 3 or 4 members, 4 or 5 members of the Charleston County School Board, and they just had another one elected. And we're losing to them. And, you know, I hate to say it, but young people aren't running. My friend who was on the school board is 80 years old, and she got elected, and she's one of the minority fighting. So please, run.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
I wanted to mention also for people who are interested in libraries as an institution, there's a film I was an advisor on called Free for All, the public library. And it's going to be airing April the 29th on PBS, the show Independent Lens. And it starts based in San Francisco primarily, but it really is about the history of libraries. And they have this amazing vintage footage of, you know, people pulling carts around with books on them in the 1800s. And that indomitable spirit of we're going to get books out there, and all the different women who've been kind of disappeared, you know, Dewey, of the Dewey Decimal System. Turned out they had to get him fired because he was a molester. But his system still works. But all of these women who helped shape the library system of this country, it's a really fabulous documentary. Free for all. Yeah.
Actually, I'd like to talk about porn. I have a question. I love everyone's opinion because I would much rather my 14-year-old son read Catcher in the Rye than look at internet porn. And that feels like a protest everyone can get behind, or a concern everyone can get behind. It's 12-year-olds looking at these things as opposed to reading Catcher in the Rye. And I'm curious if you all as teachers and tastemakers have an opinion on why books have become such a frightening thing as opposed to, you know, kids being able to look at something that's often incredibly misogynistic and very dangerous to how they view their sexuality. And that's my question.
That's intense.
The Broligarchy. The tech, I mean, the one monoculture I think we have left in this country is, and Ezra Klein was just talking about this on his podcast, is the sort of, you know, tech, basically, phones and like software or internet. And so the people making money, I think, is the real problem. Is you know, let's let AI do the searching for us or whatever. And I think it comes down to just that sort of old school American capitalism where there's, you know, a tech.
Do you think it's safer then to be riled up about books than I'm thinking about people who get them from the school boards and get so angry and these people are so frightening as opposed to.
This is related to that. Porn is not going to teach them to think.
Right.
Or at least not think with their brain. Books will make them, will teach them how to think. And it's that fear and that control. And if they can't think and they're not exposed to these other ideas, then it's way easier to control them because none of this will exist. The trans people won't exist, queer people, I mean, black people won't exist because they took Colin Powell's name off the Arlington Cemetery website. They took all of the black service people, and I think, so they've taken the T off the Stonewall website, and then they took queer off the Stonewall website. And I think they've taken gay out of military stuff, so if you're gonna look for the Enola Gay,
Yes, yes.
or your last name is Gay,
Yeah.
but you're not gonna be there either. So I think it's all about thinking.
It is about
and
thinking,
learning
I
and
agree.
learning to think and having an idea. If you don't have ideas, you're
Right.
way easier to control.
And they don't care if your son gets a hard on, that's fine. And they don't care if the ideas about mistreatment of women or rape or any of those things are communicated as easy
Yeah.
and
Yes.
acceptable. They don't care about that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Women are household objects.
Women are household objects, yes.
Why don't you bring us to a close with "And Tango Makes Three"?
Oh, and Tango.
Oh. Well, you got Lolita.
Lolita, but why don't we take a vote? Lolita versus Tango Makes Three. It's a hard.
I'm gonna go with the penguin.
Yeah, because it's shorter.
Tango Makes Three is the true story of two male penguins who fell in love. And it was in a zoo. And there were a couple of straight penguins who had 2 eggs, and they gave 1 egg to the 2 male penguins, nurtured it and did everything necessary, and Tango is the name of the chick who hatched and was just fine. Fine. And I think this is probably a good one to close on. Benjamin, talking to you. I somehow failed to write down which county in Florida a group of high school students sued the fucking school and got "And Tango Make Three" put back on the shelf.
Lawsuits are a good tactic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lawsuits are a good tactic.
Yes.
I have a quote I would love to give you.
Go.
This is from Stanley Kunitz, and Tony put this at the opening of Angels in America. In a murderous time, the heart breaks and lives by breaking.
Yes. Perfect.
There you go.
We beat on.
Yeah, we beat on.
We beat on, we
The
beat
little
on.
thing, the little things matter every single day. Tell someone about a book that changed your life. I mean, we're all, we care about that so much, but it's the little tiny things that really, I think, do make a huge difference.
Those little libraries,
The
I
little
love them.
libraries.
Put one
The
outside
free
our house.
library. Yeah.
I put, every queer book I own, I put in a little free library.
And they too are.
And people take them.
In some areas, they too are under attack.
Really?
The threat that you can be sued if you have a book in your little free library that, has been banned in that school district.
Well, they should register with Little Free Libraries and let the national organization support,
Yeah, everybody, please build a little free library. Our neighborhood.
Right. And make sure it's on your property.
Yes.
Don't
Yeah.
put it on the public street.
And we will resist.
Right. Resistance is not futile.
It is not futile, no.
Thanks, gang.
Yeah.
Thank you.